Hey, everybody, welcome back. We're glad you're here. It's time for another edition of Silver and Black Today, an Aussie Sports original podcast, also heard on the radio. So, hello to our radio audience on 1015 KDON, the Boomer in Las Vegas, as well as the Bet HD2, both Odyssey radio stations in Sin City, in Las Vegas, in the Mojave Desert, Clark County, Nevada. Thanks for being with us. I am your host, Scott Branson. Joining me is my co-host, my man, of course, senior NFL writer at Bleacher Report. His name is Mr. Maurice, as we call him, Moten, Mo Moten. Mo's here. He is also the Raiders columnist up on sportsnot.com. You can catch him up on x.com at Mo Moten, Moemoton. If you want great opinions, subscribe there to Mo. Go see him, talk with him, get his takes on not only the Raiders, but also the entire NFL, as well as fantasy football, some betting picks, which are going to be coming up this season, as he's done great with the last few years. So make sure you do that. I am at LV Gully on X. The show is SNB Today. All right, Mo, let's jump in. We got a lot to get to today. Of course, now we're back to our season schedule. You can catch us on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and of course, Sundays after the game. This week, Saturday after the game, the last preseason game against the Cardinals. We'll also probably throw in, we'll see how it goes with the number of calls as they pick up. Might throw in a Wednesday show, which might be just all callers. So all of you, the Raider Nation switchboard. Today, we're going to talk about the depth chart. Final depth chart is out. We're going to talk about what that tells us in segment 1. Segment 2, we're going to talk about the Raiders defense like we did last show, except we're going to take a different approach here, which is we're going to talk about what the Raiders defense, if it continues to be very much a work in progress, what does that mean for the offense? What are they going to have to do when we hit the regular season to keep this team in games and to win games? And then, of course, the third segment is your voice. It's the Raider Nation switchboard. So we're going to jump into that right away. Mo, here we go. We're getting in. We got some clues. We're going to talk about the clues we're playing sleuth, right? We are becoming detectives, football detectives for Raider Nation as we look at that final depth chart. And it does tell us a little bit, right?
I'm on the other side of it and say not much. If you look at the depth chart from the previous depth chart and the first depth chart, it hasn't really changed. It's pretty much the same depth chart, minus obviously Ja'Cory Bennett getting traded to the Eagles, so he's obviously not on it. I'll be completely honest with you, Scott. I really don't pay much attention to depth charts because it doesn't really reflect off-season progress. How the players are moving up the depth chart. The Denver Broncos, for example, had R.G. Harvey listed as running back number 5, and he was probably, I believe, the starting running back when the Denver Broncos took the field in their first preseason game. So if you're looking at depth charts and you're agonizing over depth charts, I would advise you not to do it.
Right. We're going to get into that. And to your point, this is part of this discussion, which is you can't give them too much weight. They might offer some clues, but they certainly offer some questions going into the final game because remember, depth charts are not put together by coaches, believe it or not. The media group at the Raiders, they put this together. It's for the media so we understand who's playing where and kind of what it looks like going in the game. There could be misdirection. I would imagine a savvy coach like Pete Carroll in a division with Sean Payton, Andy Reid, and Jim Harbaugh, too. There's a little bit of gamesmanship going on there. So that's the caveat there. But we do want to go through it because I think there are some questions, and it's certainly it's worth discussing and having some fun with, and that's what we're going to do here in this first segment. So, Mo, we talk about quarterback Geno Smith. No surprise. He's the starting quarterback. There's no question about that. And at QB2, we talked about this the last show, right? Which is, hey, Aiden O'Connell has not looked great, which is not good for many reasons. One, if he's going to be your QB2. Second reason is if you are, and there is a market for backup quarterbacks out there from a trade perspective, the Raiders felt good about Cam Miller, although Cam Miller now has fallen back a little bit. We saw his performance drop off in the last game against the 49ers. So not much to talk about there. We get to tight end, Brock Bowers, duh. Michael Mayer, duh. And so I think you look at that from a depth perspective, the Raiders perhaps have the deepest bench, the deepest tight end room in the NFL.
I would say so. We'll see what happens with Ian Thomas. I did an interview with my guy Chris Yandick, and he wanted to know if Christy Runyon was going to make the roster. Chris Runyon had some bright moments in that previous preseason game against the 49ers, and I told him his direct competition is Ian Thomas. So if Runyon were to make the roster, it'll be for the tight end 3 spot. Thomas had a drop in that previous game too, if I remember correctly. I don't think Thomas loses the roster spot, but it wouldn't surprise me if he did. He is a veteran. He's more of a blocking tight end at this point of his career. He came out of Indiana as more of a receiving pass catching tight end. And as I said, that skill set doesn't still need to be on the up and up right now with that drop. But other than that, I would say other than tight end, I'm also looking at the running back position because I do think there is some misdirection there, as you mentioned. While Zamir White has been said to be looking good at practices, Raheem Mostert did play late into that 49ers game. This could be the Raiders trying to showcase Zamir White and say, hey, I know he had a rough year last year, had some injuries, but he's looking pretty good and he's battling for that RB2 spot. Sean Reed also reported this in The Athletic that it's a real competition. We'll see if that's true or not.
Right. The final depth chart lists Zamir White as number 2 with Raheem Mostert, excuse me, speak up, Scott, at number 2 behind Ashton Genty. So we'll see that. And it had a Zamir White or Raheem Mostert. So you decide who's 2 there, right? Again, to your point about these depth charts, but also you look at the offensive line. It appears, based on not just the depth chart, but what we've been hearing from all the great folks covering the team on the ground at practice every day, like our good buddy Jesse Merrick, though it looks Jordan Meredith at center, doing really well. We see Jackson Powers-Johnson at right guard. And you guys will hear a conversation I had with Mark Schlereth, which I know some of you have a negative reaction to Mark because of his Bronco situation. But when you hear the show I did with him, and I believe that's going to be out tomorrow, we'll also put it up on our feed. He told a really great Raider Nation story, a very positive one. So I want you to listen to that. But he talked about it and said, listen, and he echoed, had you been on that interview, Mo, your smile would have been a mile wide, because he echoed something you said during the last show, which was, when you look at your offensive line, you want your 5 best linemen out there. So if your 5 best linemen include Jordan Meredith at center, you still want Jackson Powers-Johnson out there. So you don't put a guy at center because he played there in college and he played there last year pretty well, if you get your 5 best out there. So I think you look at that. You look at Dylan Parham, looks like he's got the left guard. So it looks like the Raiders' offensive line, not just based on the depth chart, but based on the reports out of practice, which I trust a lot more, have that line. And this is what they're going to go with when they kick off the season in New England against the Patriots.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't have an issue with Jackson Powers-Johnson not being the starting center as long as he's with the starting offensive line.
Right.
Again, let's remember, he played 3 different positions last year. He did play guard last year and did look good at guard. It wasn't like he was a terrible guard and a great center. So if Meredith can handle that center position and you could slide Jackson Powers-Johnson over to guard, it's for the best of the offensive line, especially in hindsight now. Alex Kappa has missed most of training camp with a rib injury. So is Alex Kappa even going to be ready full go to week 1 to play in the regular season? Because if he's not, then you're looking at what at right guard. Laki Tassi, if they keep him there, he may be a developmental player. Who are they going to play at right guard if Alex Kappa isn't ready to go? So in hindsight now, looking at it, it is good that Jackson Powers-Johnson is playing right guard because they would have a big void there on their offensive line.
That's right. And this offensive line, these 5 guys that we all mentioned just now, they've been playing as a unit during this preseason. Yes, as the game went on, of course, they rotated, but you like that too. You want this line to gel with your quarterback. And we saw difference between preseason 1 and preseason 2, the games, was this line executed so much better. Right? They looked confused in the first game. Second game, they looked like they had been there before, so to speak. With this group, it helped, obviously, Geno Smith. It helped Ashton Genty. So you like that. You like to see there. And then you talk about Alex Kappa. Listen, depth, baby. Did we not talk at length about depth on Tuesday's show, right? So to have Alex Kappa as your rotational guy, your backup in is a great depth piece for this Raiders offensive line. I feel much better. Now we'll see how the performance goes against the Cardinals on Saturday, but I'll tell you what, I feel a lot better about this offensive line with how they've played as of recent, and with the depth should and somebody will get banged up. And if you have an Alex Kappa to come in, and then you have Theo Mumford Jr. as well, you have guys there that that can do the job at a pretty good level should somebody go down. So that's very good. We go to the other side of the ball now, Mo. Defensive line, Max Crosby, Malcolm Kuntz, we talk about coming back from that injury. I think, as you said last show, it's going to take him time. That's a major injury. He'll be out there playing. How many snaps he plays will be the question, but certainly it's going to be a situation where you'll see what's going on there. But Adam Butler listed up there at tackle, as well as Jonah Laulu.
There you go.
I should be able to say
You
that. Laulu. See, last show you fubbed a name. Now I'm fubbing a name like usual. So there you go. Starting at defensive tackle, but we also know that there's other pieces there as well. You look at linebacker, Jermaine Pratt, Eldon Roberts, Devin White are listed up as the starters. Pete Carroll talking this group up. He's very bullish, he said in his press conference. We'll see. Maybe it'll change as we move along as well. At safety, Jeremy Chin and Polomao are there as well as starting safeties. We'll see if that holds true. But you talked about running back. You also talked about some of the other positions there. And I didn't see any other surprises based on what we saw there. But I did one guy that I want to talk about, because I was at my first reaction, unlike you had a different reaction. My first reaction to the trade of Jacorian Bennett for Thomas Booker was like, I don't know, right? But Thomas Booker, in short time, has played really well. And I think he could end up being one of the starters in the middle there, at least sharing time with Luau. So to me, that is a good sign as well. And that trade, Jacorian Bennett playing well with the Eagles. He had a rough outing to begin, but now he's kind of picked it up. They're reporting very positive out of practice there. So again, that could be a win-win. One guy I want to mention here, because one guy we haven't talked a lot about, but I went back and I rewatched the game last night on the 22 film from NFL, and JJ Pegues playing really well. Now, I think he's more of a developmental player, yes, but I do think, Mo, he can come in and contribute pretty quickly.
Yeah, I believe he got nicked up in that game too, stayed in and finished it. So 6th-round pick. So you're not expecting that 6th-round pick to have a major role. The average 6th-round pick doesn't his first year. But JJ Pegues may be forced into a bigger role simply because of the release of Christian Wilkins. And the Raiders need some big bodies in the middle. We know Tyree Wilson can move inside and outside, but his primary positions on the edge. But Pegues, based on what I saw in that last game as well, I felt like he had a good one, and he earned more snaps with that performance. What I also say about the defensive tackle spot is there was someone on this show who answered a caller and said, don't look at that trade, that swap between Jacorian Bennett and Thomas Booker the fourth as a nothing burger, right? Remember the call?
Right.
They traded Jacorian Bennett for nothing. And I said, wait a minute. This is one, they addressed the position of need. 2, Thomas Booker IV wasn't going to play behind Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. Those guys were first-round picks, so it's obviously he was in rotation, but he was still working his way up the depth chart. Someone on the show also said that the trade could work out for both the Eagles and the Raiders. And at least for now, it looks like Jacorian Bennett pushing for the cornerback number 2 spot. Thomas Booker IV getting first-team reps for the Raiders. It looks good for both players in their new locations. On the Raiders side, let's hope that Thomas Booker IV can play a significant amount of snaps, because the Raiders are going to need him to help their run defense.
Yeah, and real quickly, too, we look before we end this segment and go to the break. The depth chart, Darnay Holmes, Darian Porter, and Eric Stokes as starters. I'm not on board with that. I don't think that's going to how it ends up. I think Caillou Blue-Kelly has taken over that starting quarterback spot over Darian Porter. Not that Darian Porter hasn't played pretty well, but still, I think that's where it would be. So I think Porter will be the third stringer there as well, with Eric Stokes and Caillou Blue-Kelly being out there. And then at safety, Terrell Edmonds joined the Raiders just days before the 49ers game. He saw time with the first team defense. Obviously, he was the guy they signed as Lonnie Johnson Jr., of course, who had the leg break in the preseason, so he's out for the season. So I think that's going to end up being who ends up in that spot. Do you think the same?
Pete Carroll, his usual optimistic self, is hoping that Lonnie Johnson Jr. comes back. We'll see what happens there. But I think Terrell Edmunds, being that he can tackle, is a big part of why he's there in the first place. You look at the safeties the Raiders have brought in. I know they moved Jamal Adams to linebacker, but Terrell Edmunds, similar safety where he lines up mostly in the box. I think he's going to get that rotational safety spot when Jeremy Chin lines up in the nickel.
Nice. Yep. Absolutely. All right. So there you have it. End of the first segment. Lightning fast with that. So much to talk about. We appreciate you guys being with us. Now, we're going to go to the break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Raiders' offense and defense and how they are going to be working together to make sure this team improves, put some wins on the board, because guess what? We all know the potential of this Raiders offense, as Mo has said, could be a top 10 offense, maybe even better than that. We don't know. We'll see, especially with the offensive line gelling as it has. So we're going to talk about what the offense is going to need to do to help this defense that still has a lot of question marks. That's coming up after the break. You're with Scott. You're with Mo. This is Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast, heard on the radio, 101.5 KDON and The Bet in Las Vegas. We're coming back after these words. Welcome back to Silver and Black Today, segment number 2 here on our second show of the week. Hey, do us a favor. If you don't already subscribe to the podcast, what the heck are you waiting for? Please do so wherever you get your audio. Just look for Silver and Black Today. Make sure you subscribe. And don't forget, rate and review. That helps us a lot. We appreciate hearing from you, how much you like the show or don't like the show. Either way, it's totally fine. It's your opinion. Share it with us by rating and reviewing. If you're watching us on YouTube, Rumble, X, wherever it is, don't forget to subscribe to our video channel. I recommend the YouTube channel. There, you can hit the thumbs up. Also, hit the notifications bell. That way, we have a new video. Guess what? You're going to know first. We appreciate it. The chat is always off the chain there. So jump in and talk with Raider Nation about your team. Talk about the show. We certainly appreciate it. Momo and Scott Branson back with you. And this one we're going to get into. And this came out of my conversation with Mark Schlereth, as I told you, Mo, concerning the Raiders defense and the fact that we still have a lot of question marks there. We just don't know how it's going to go. And we've seen some troubling signs, I think. Of course, not anything you can't overcome, but we've seen some troubling signs in the preseason as far as containing the pass. Now, containing the run, they got a lot better against the 49ers, as we talked about on Tuesday. And so we'll see what happens there. But because of that, Mark brought up the point that you're going to have to make sure that your offense does well enough to limit the offensive possessions of the opposing team, right? Keep the defense on the other field. If you look at the statistics, Mo, once a defense hits about 60, 62 plays in a game, doesn't matter how well conditioned or how deep they are, they get kind of gassed. So you want to limit the number of plays that your defense is on the field. And so you look at that and the defensive struggles and you say, okay, we want to try to aggressive goal of keep the other team to around 50, under 60 plays for sure on offense, okay? And if you do that, that's going to rely on your offense, on the Raiders offense, on Geno Smith and that crew, and obviously Chip Kelly, to really keep the pressure on the other defense. Keep the ball as long as you can, sustain drives, not turning the ball over. That's a huge one. That's always a big deal. But I think with this team, it's going to be even more important. And so when you talk about that, we know a lot about what Pete Carroll does. Now, the Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll combination, we know about their offensive scheme and what they look like, even though we haven't seen a lot of it during the preseason because they keep it pretty vanilla. But we have enough data to look at that. And if you look at what the Seahawks do, the Seahawks keep the ball when Pete Carroll was the coach. The Seahawks kept the ball, would score, have opportunities, longer drives, ball control. That's why he loves the run. This is why Zamir White, that offensive line, are so important as well. And that allows Geno Smith to pass. He doesn't have to throw. Everybody likes the vertical bombs. I get it. And I'm not saying you won't see him because Geno Smith's got a gun on him. But talk a little bit about this premise and the idea that this offense can do a lot to take pressure off the Raiders' still defense in flux.
What are the usual sayings? Ball control offense, win the time of possession. That's what you're going to get out of this offense if they're going to keep the defense off the field, if that is one of their primary objectives. Not to say that they don't want to score quick, because the vertical passing game will be part of the offense. We saw it in Seattle with Pete Carroll when he was there with Geno Smith. You'll see it with the Raiders this year. To what extent, we'll find out. And I think it's going to also depend on how these young receivers come along, because we know Brock Bowers is great. We know Jacoby Myers is reliable, but you need those third, fourth options as well to also sustain drives. Now, it looks obvious in hindsight now with that idea why they drafted Ashton Jeanty, and he can potentially get 20 touches a game, not just as a ball carrier, but as a receiver. So you're going to be using the ground game and the short passing game to, as you said, sustain drives, keep your offense on the field, and then finish drives with 6 points, so that not only are you keeping the ball away from the other team, but you're putting points on the board and limiting the other team's scoring opportunities. That's the name of the game when it comes to ball control, winning the time of possession, that type of offense. Now, again, you're going to see the sparks over the top. But for the most part, the Raiders are going to have to protect their defense, specifically the secondary. I know some people aren't concerned yet because it's just a preseason. But when you're talking about having Caillou Blue-Kelly and Eric Stokes and Darian Porter, a rookie third round, as your top three cornerbacks, two of those guys have a lot to prove. One hasn't been able to stay healthy for most of his career. Yes, you're going to have to play some ball control offense.
Right. And controlling the run on defense, too, is going to be big. I know we're talking about the offense and what they need to do here, too. But from a defensive standpoint, we saw that improvement from game to game in the preseason against the run, which was very, very encouraging. But this is something that I'm going to be looking for against the Cardinals as well, to just see if that sustains itself. Does the team look good against the run? And then from an offensive perspective with Geno Smith, you look at some teams who score very quickly. Now, again, like you said, you're going to go over the top. We've seen Pete Carroll's offenses do that in Seattle with what they had going on there with Russell Wilson and so on. So it's not that I don't expect the Raiders to do it, or that if you score and you got a guy open and you go long, you take the points. Don't get me wrong. Building a lead, too, also helps take some pressure off that defense. But looking at the situation with what we know, too, about Chip Kelly, that kind of spread offense, but Chip Kelly also uses the running back. We go the most recent samples out of college, of course, with Ohio State. But I think that this is where we talked early in the offseason about, I should say early in camp, about the importance of Michael Mayer here too, right? Because your point about the young receivers and being a little bit of a known, there's a lot to be hopeful for with Trey Tucker in year 3 coming in and what we've seen from him. And of course, Dant'e Thornton Jr. But Michael Mayer and those two tight end sets, might be just huge for this offense.
Not only huge in the passing game, but huge for blocking. I remember but the Raiders first drafted Brock Bowers, a lot of fans questioned, he's a terrible blocker. And it wasn't that he's a terrible blocker. It's just that his pass catching ability was so great that it dwarfed, what he can do as a blocker. And we all know Michael Mayer is a traditional type tight end. So with those guys out there at the position, it's also going to help out the run game, Ashton Jeanty, and those running backs. My one concern, and I'll say this again, and I said this on, Wednesday, that the Raiders' RB2 position, that battle, whoever it may be, is still very important, because if Ashton Jeanty has to come up the field for whatever reason, you got to be able to trust that second running back to keep those drives going as well. Not just Ashton Jeanty, but the guy coming in behind to spell him as well. And is that going to be Raheem Mostert? I did a Bleacher Report segment, and I said I think Raheem Mostert's on the roster bubble, and I mentioned it a little bit in the segment 1, him playing late in that game. Zamir White doesn't have pass catching production at a high level. Just 21 catches for 128 receiving yards. So is Sincere McCormick going to be in the mix? Will they use Dylan Lowby on third downs to keep the clock going? They have to figure out that RB2 spot, because it's going to be an important key role in this offense.
It sure is. And that's the thing, too, about Jeanty that I think people forget. If you haven't watched a lot of Ashton Jeanty and you're a football head and you want to deep dive a little bit, go look at some of his college tape, because he's a good blocker, right? So people look at his size and assume that he's not a good blocker. I mean, I've heard that from a lot of fans. Well, he's going to run the ball well, but I'm not sure how he's going to block and blah. But I'll tell you what, he's a physical guy. I mean, if you've seen how he's built, he's built for it too. So I think that you're absolutely right. What a great point, Mo. That blocking is going to be big. And you're right. RB2 is a very, very underrated position with this offense because of the reason you point out. You need to be able to sustain those drives. You need to be able to do that. And you can't just pass the ball all the time. You need to be able to run the ball in this offense to set up that pass to open it up a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to watch that and see how it develops. Are the Raiders done? There's some rumors floating around that they might add to the roster at running back, at cornerback, and things like that. But we'll see. We'll see who gets put on the street. I think there's a lot to be there. But Dylan Laube, as you mentioned, another guy who's done well in camp. Has he done well enough? I think so. And I think he'll be a guy that'll be very important in special teams as well. So you look to that too. How does a guy make the roster if he's kind of done well but not great enough to win a role like RB2? Well, you're on the roster, you develop, you continue to work with that offense, but you also contribute on special teams. So it'll be good. Mo, anything else with this offense, especially with Chip Kelly and the scheming, that you look at and say, okay, this is going to do this team well as far as being able to have those longer sustained drives and ball control offense?
Having the depth along the offensive line. I know we talked about a little bit earlier, but we'll see what happens with Alex Casper and that rib injury. Is he all the way back yet? Because if he's not, it means we could see Thayer Munford Jr. on the field as their sixth offensive lineman. If things, if something happens with an injury or someone has to come off the field, that offensive line has to be able to help that offense sustain drives because you're protecting the quarterback, you're opening lanes for the ball carriers. If the offensive line continues to look like what we saw in the 49ers game, it's a positive sign for a ball control offense. I just find it funny, Scott, when people say, hey, you can't overreact to preseason games on one end when you're critical, but everyone's now praising the offensive line. I say, well, the 49ers running a vanilla defense. So how good do we know the offensive line really is? So just to shout out the people who say, well, don't overreact to this, but we should overreact to that. Well, I will say this, Scott. I like what I saw of the offensive line, and I hope we continue to see it going into the season opener.
Yeah, one of the questions we had was about Brendan Carroll, right, as coach as well. Not a lot of experience there, and so far so good. But again, when you flip the switch and you get to week 1 of the regular season, it's on, baby. And so now it counts, and that's when you start to see where you are when you get out there against first-team defenses. Even if it's the Patriots are a much better team than they were last year, and much better coached. I believe they will be with Mike Vrabel there. So, all right, we're going to take our final break here on Silver and Black today, and then we're coming back to take your phone calls on the Raider Nation switchboard. It's Scott, it's Mo. It's Silver and Black today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast heard on 101.5 KDON and The Bet on the radio in Las Vegas. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the home stretch here. Final segment of this edition of Silver and Black today. Don't forget, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your audio. Don't forget to rate and review. If you're watching us on video, subscribe there too. Hit that like button. Also, the subscription bell. That bell, ring it, baby. Ring it so you know when we have a new video. Mo Moten, Scott Branson back with you. Appreciate you guys being with us. Also, do me a favor. Mo's doing these short videos for Bleacher Report on, is it Monday, Wednesdays, Mo? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays.
Tuesday, Wednesday, drop a segment on Bleacher Report. So you can check those out. Both of them up for this week. I talked about 3 notable veterans who could be cut: Alex Kappa, Raheem Mostert, also Zamir White. Also talked about Tyree Wilson expectations for 2025. That was a big topic of discussion early in the week. With Malcolm Kuntz coming along slowly from that torn ACL, it's an opportunity for Tyree Wilson to really step it up in the similar way that Malcolm Kuntz stepped it up when the Raiders needed someone to do it on the edge in 2023.
That's right. Don't forget to download the Bleacher Report app. That way you can watch Mo on your phone or your iPad, whatever you're watching on. And also, if you got a Roku or a Fire Stick, anything like that, get the Bleacher Report channel. You can watch them there too, so you can get Mo's head really big in your living room.
As if it's not big enough, right?
No, see, but you get Mo in the living room. I mean, come on, you can't do any better than that. So yeah, so we want you to do that. Also, Mo, I got a plug for you as well. Daily, Monday through Friday, I believe, right? You're doing the daily Raider report up on sportsnaut.com. So check that out as well, as in addition to what he writes on Bleacher Report about the rest of the league. So lots to catch up, man. It's the season now. Get ready. Here we go. All right, we're going to get to your calls on the Raider Nation switchboard now. We'll mix it up. We'll go all over the country. If you want to be a part of that, guess what? 702-900-7869 is the number. 702-900-7869. We're having shows on Tuesdays and Thursdays now. So if you call in Tuesdays, your phone calls could maybe be on Tuesday. If we don't do calls on Tuesday, we might do a separate show on Wednesday of just calls. And then the Thursday show. So my recommendation to you is, especially with the games mostly being on Sundays, is call in on Monday. Call in on Monday morning or Sunday after the game, and then call in Tuesday or Wednesday to get on that Thursday show, right? Okay. All right, Mo, let's go out. Let's see how people are feeling in Raider Nation, because, we're all about feelings on this show. Just kidding. Yeah. Here we go. All right. First call, right up.
Hey, Scott, Mo, this is Joe, AK Rio Raider 34. I just wanted to, after watching the second preseason game, the secondary still looks scary. I'm not sure that Jacorian Bennett is going to worries me. The trade worries me a little bit. I know Booker is going to be, I hope he's going to be okay, but I would like your honest assessment, sugarcoating it. How is Booker going to, who is he going to surpass to be in the starting lineup? I saw some things on him on Saturday where he was getting, he was trying to go in the one gap and got blown away. And I know that's just one play, but at that position, we need somebody that can play two gap. Maybe I'm wrong, but give me your honest assessment, and then honest assessment of the secondary as well, especially the cornerbacks. I'm just still not in love with our cornerbacks, but one's a 1 year deal and two are rookie, a 2nd year deal and a rookie, and I don't know if Kelly's deal is 1 year or not. But thanks, appreciate you guys and love your show, man. Thank you.
All right, there you go. Real Raider 34. We appreciate you calling in, man. Again, 702-900-7869 is the number. Let's start on the inside, Mo, because you talk about a Butler there. You talk about Booker. He mentioned Booker. And I mentioned J.J. Pegues earlier. And like you said, he might be a developmental player, but I look at the stats. He had his first sack against San Francisco. He's got a 32% pass rush win rate against the 49ers. Played himself, I think, into a solid role there. So that's going to be in flux in the middle, I think, as we head into that first game.
Right. And I don't think Thomas Booker is going to really have to work. I shouldn't say work hard, but I don't think he has strong competition to get many snaps on the interior. Adam Butler's the only player that you can really stamp and say he's going to see a lot of snaps at defensive tackle. Other than that, I mean, Jonah Lalau has had some moments. J.J. Pegues, again, still a rookie, still coming along, while he did have a pretty good performance against the 49ers. Thomas Booker IV, I believe, is going to play at least 50% of the snaps. You pointed out, he got blown up on one play. But if you look at the complete game, I thought he was decent. And that's all the Raiders can ask for right now. After they let go of Christian Wilkins, you're not going to pull a all-pro defensive tackle off of the street. I'm more concerned about the secondary, particularly the cornerback position. As you mentioned, Rio Raider, I talked about it. I like Kyu Bukele, but let's be honest, he doesn't have a lot of starting experience, and neither does Cameron Richardson. And Darian Porter's a rookie. Eric Stokes hasn't able to stay healthy for most of his career in Green Bay. He's been in and out of the starting lineup. So the Raiders are going to have their pass rush. Their front seven is going to have to get to the quarterback and get him on the ground, because if whoever the quarterback is that they're playing against, if he has time in the pocket, he could really carve up that secondary, particularly on the boundary.
And not to put any more pressure that's not already there, but this is why I think Tyree Wilson is one of the wild cards here, because he's going to move inside, outside, as we've seen in the preseason. So he could play a massive role, not only on the inside, but also on the outside opposite Max Crosby. If those guys can create and find a good rhythm of a rotation there, from a Patrick Graham's coaching perspective, that'll help out significantly on the back end. And you mentioned Caillou Blue-Kelly, and that's the question I have for you, Mo. We look at how much are we going to learn in week 1? Because they're playing the Patriots. You got Drake May back there, but the Patriots offense, I know it's new. It's a new scheme and everything like that. But you look at the tools they have, they got better, but they're not exactly going to be an offensive juggernaut. How much can we learn in that first game, even about the defensive backs?
I wouldn't overreact either way. I know it's the regular season and that's the real games are played in the regular season, obviously. But for the first week of the season, if the Raiders only allow 100 passing yards, wouldn't overreact. Drake May is a second-year quarterback. Stephon Diggs coming back over 20 ACL himself. That Patriots pass catching group isn't top tier. It's probably one of the weaker pass catching groups they're going to see with Stephon Diggs coming off of a torn ACL. I wouldn't overreact the other way either if they were to give up, 300 yards, simply because, as I said, with two guys out there potentially not having much starting experience, they're going to have to learn on the job, and there are going to be some rough patches and rough stretches with that.
That's right. All right, we're going right out to our guy, Yandog. Here he is.
Hey, Scott, Mo, Yandog. Haven't heard from you in 3 weeks. Just figure I'd call and tell you how excited I'm going to be when the season starts. I can't wait. I think some of the key players that are going to help a lot is Thornton, Dant'e Thornton, of course, Brock Bowers, Jante, our running back. And I think we're going to be all right. And I'm sticking to my my prediction, 11-6.
Wow.
I think we can get 11 wins. I really do believe in my heart. I've been saying that for months now, and I hope I can make believers out of a lot of people, though. All right, and but besides that, I hope that our offensive line is going to stay intact. That's the only thing that I'm nervous about is the offensive line. I mean, besides Colton Miller, if they can do their job and we can get those pass plays and running plays going, I think we're going to be pretty good, though. And, with the teams that have great offensive lines, I'd say 75% of them do pretty well in the NFL. But actually, that's about it, guys. I don't have much to say, but when the season starts, and hopefully the Raiders will be on a winning note, that's what I'm looking forward to. So, but anyway, that's about it, guys. And hopefully, I make the show this time. So we'll talk. And this is Yandog, over and out.
There we go. The 4-bark signal, the end of the call. Hey, he mentioned Dant'e Thornton Jr. A lot of people like what they see there. There's a lot to like, of course. He's been the talk of camp going back to rookie mini camp. But again, like you said with the defensive backs, don't get too high, too low after game number 1. What's realistic to expect from a receiver like that, Mo? Because when you get out there in the regular season, things get a lot faster.
They get a lot faster. He wasn't a high volume receiver at Tennessee. Doesn't mean he won't be with the Raiders. I look at Ladd McConkey as a prime example. Ladd McConkey wasn't a high volume receiver at Georgia. He had over 1,200 yards as a rookie with the Chargers because they had to feed him the ball. Dant'e Thornton Jr. is not in that situation. But what I'm trying to tell you is that he may only need 3 catches to get 80 yards. That's how much of a big explosive receiver he is, and that's what the Raiders need to stretch defenses and be versatile on offense. So I like what I see out of him at a training camp, and even though not a lot of action in the preseason for him, he's gonna line up on the outside. I think he is a step ahead of Jack Bech in terms of how much he can contribute. But we'll see what he does against the Patriots in week 1. I will say the Patriots secondary pretty good. They got Christian Gonzalez on the outside. They brought in a veteran cornerback in Carlton Davis III. So if Dant'e Thornton Jr. puts up a donut or has a forgettable NFL debut in the regular season, don't say, oh, it was just all preseason hype. The Patriots secondary is pretty good.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Yandog, roof, 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 roof. Thanks for calling in, man. Appreciate it. Now we go out to our in-house resident comedian here at Silver and Black today. He's a working comedian down in Austin, Texas. It's AJ DeMello.
Hey, boys, it's
Dave Casper, the Ghost.
Oh, sorry,
from
it's
the
Dave.
Empire
Wrong
State,
call.
the great state of New York,
Boy,
in
oh
the
boy.
Hudson Valley. Okay, it's watch the Niner Raider game. I just want to throw my 3 cents in, and we'll take it from there. Overall, I thought the offense had more flow to it. The offensive line played a lot better. I loved seeing Ashton Genty get some running in there. I loved the play call on 3rd and 5, which is for a lot of teams, it's more of an obvious passing down, but they ran it, picked up 8 yards. Geno missed Thornton on that one deep pass, but that's a timing issue probably more than anything. I think overall, I like the flow of the offense, and as the season goes on, I think they potentially can generate a lot of points. Little concerned they don't have a number 1 receiver. Jacoby Myers is not a number 1 receiver. He's an excellent number 2 receiver, because Brock Bowers is your number 1 receiver / tight end. But anyway, so overall, I like where the offense is at. Defense, no pass rush. The lack of a pass rush is concerning. Their run defense was a lot better. But Brock Purdy had too much time in the back, in the back there. And, when he had a lot of time, he made a lot of passes. I think the secondary is a big red flag. I thought that for a while, and seeing it more now. I think that's if the Raiders cannot consistently get a pass rush without blitzing, and maybe I think a lot of quarterbacks will have big days against this secondary. Jeremy Chin, excellent pick, but overall, I think them not addressing the cornerback situation will come back to haunt them. My other biggest thing, which drives me crazy as a Raider fan or as a football fan, is giving up the 3rd and long, the 3rd and 18, the 3rd and 8. Late in the game, I think it was a 4th and 8. They picked up the first down at the end of the game there. That makes me nuts. So that seems like that's been a Raider DNA issue for this defense. Doesn't matter who the coordinator is or who's on the team. Anyway, so finally, Aiden O'Connell, another pick, lack of mobility to a couple of sacks. Unless they can bring in a veteran backup, then you just roll with Aiden O'Connell as your backup. I'm not for him or against him. He's struggling, obviously, but he has playing experience that we all said all along. He's a good backup quarterback. If Geno goes down, this team's not going anywhere anyway. Cam Miller's not ready for prime time. I like him.
Oh, there he goes. He got cut off. Sorry, Dave Casper, the Ghost. Time ran out. But anyway, good call. Mo, question, because I look at Jacoby Myers. He said Jacoby Myers is not a number 1. I understand that point of view, but if you look at Jacoby Myers and the numbers, he's one of 10 receivers with 67 plus receptions and 800 plus receiving yards in each of the past 4 seasons. Last year, 87 catches, 1,027 yards, average of 11.8 per catch, 4 touchdowns as well. On those touchdowns, he had an average of 11.5 yards. 23, going back one season, he had 800 yards, again, 11.4 average and 8 touchdowns. You look at that, and that's with way below average, and I'm being nice, quarterback play. With Jacoby Myers and Geno Smith, isn't he a number 1?
It's all about perspective, Scott. If you think a number 1 receiver is a guy who gets you, over 1,100 yards with consistency, double-digit touchdowns, then he's not a number 1 wide receiver. If you think a number 1 wide receiver is just someone who's reliable when thrown to, doesn't drop a lot of passes, can also be a complete player and also block on the outside, then he'd be your cup of tea. It's all about perspective. But for me, with Jacoby Myers, I want to see if he's going to get his extension, because that came up a couple of weeks ago when Ian Rappaport said after Colt Miller got his extension, he also said that the Raiders had been in talks with Jacoby Myers to get an extension, and hasn't happened yet, and we're almost a week away from the season. Is he gonna? I'm sure Jacoby Myers is a professional, and he's not going to sour on this. He's not going to. At this point, you're not holding out, right? But how is that situation? How could that situation impact the offense of his play If he doesn't get that contract, if all these talks lead to absolutely nothing and he has to play out the year with no guaranteed money. Remember, when a player goes into the season with no guaranteed money, they get hurt. There's no protection for them. So I'm sure he wouldn't be a happy camper if he doesn't get that extension.
Right, and I'm bullish. I think he will put up 1,000 yards again and more, and it could be his best season. Last year was that, but I think he could put up his best season because of the crew around him, because of the quarterback. It matters. Having a quarterback who, of the experience of Geno Smith and what he's able to do, matched up with the fact that you have some good young wide receiver talent if they come along, and then you got the tight end situation. To me, it sets it up for him nicely, and I think he can do that. So maybe he'll change people's perspective on being a number one, depending how you look at it. All right, Dave Casper the Ghost. Great
Casper
call. We got it. All right, we're getting to our last call here on the show. It's time for our buddy Terrick, out in Chicago usually, unless he's traveling. Let's see where he's at.
Scott and Mo, how's it going? This is Terrick ringing you guys up from Chicago. I just want to talk about the Raiders-Niners preseason Week 2 game. I was definitely more impressed. I was glad to see the first-team offense go early into the second quarter. They definitely looked the running lanes were there. The offensive line certainly performed far better. Genti, 7 carries, 33 yards and a touchdown. I think Geno had a good command of the offense. I think it was a beautiful strike to Bowers. I like that they took some shots down the field. I think Thornton Jr., he overthrew Thornton Jr. for what would have been a touchdown, I think. And last week, Thornton Jr. was underthrown. So it's nice to see the offense come alive. It's definitely what kind of Raider fans probably envisioned. And I think they're definitely going to catch stride when they are playing, for real. I am really concerned about our defense. You guys tell me, what is it going to take for us to turn the corner to where we can finally say we have a halfway decent secondary and a decent linebacking core? I think, again, it looks like it's going to be a problem. I think in the first half, the 49ers, other than the interception by Jeremy Chin and a missed field goal, I don't believe the Niners punted once in the first half. It's a little puzzling because, Pete Carroll is a defensive specialist. We've retained Patrick Graham for continuity's sake. And you would think that some of these guys would have been an upgrade from what we've had, the previous few years, but that doesn't look like it's going to be the case. In an offense-heavy division, especially our conference, the play of our the play of our linebackers and secondary is so far what we've seen. Obviously, it is preseason still, but what we've seen from the starting unit, it's simply not going to cut it. So it'll be interesting to see if the Raiders make any type of moves before preseason and training camp conclude. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on the game. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you again soon. Go Raiders. Bye-bye.
All right, there's Terrick. I don't disagree with anything he said, Mo, but the Raiders had a lot of issues to address in the offseason when John Spytek, Pete Carroll came in. You can't do it all in one season, and I think that's where it is. I think in the draft, they obviously addressed some of the issues there, and some guys will have to wait and see. They did offense. They went with Genti at number 6. It's going to take some time on that one. So it wasn't ever going to be a fully baked team, in my view, because of that reason.
Scott, I think they could have done a better job, assuming they were able to lure players to Las Vegas. I think they could have done a better job at the cornerback position, though. Mike Hilton had been out there for quite a while. If you got to go out there and get Rasul Douglas, I know he's inconsistent, but he's a bigger cornerback who can get some interceptions. If you have to go that route, you go that route. But it's interesting now that people are now starting to come along and say, hey, we understand that the preseason is all about vanilla play calling and defenses and offensive schematics, but there's still an obvious concern there if your defense can't force more 3-and-outs. To answer Terrick's question, the 49ers did not punt in that game. They had a missed field goal and interception from Jeremy Chin. That's what got the 49ers defense off the field, or why they came off empty-handed. But their defense, when it comes to making stops, even against second and third stringers, weren't able to do it. And some things do translate to the regular season. I know some people want to throw all the negative stuff from the preseason and say, oh, that's not going to translate. But all the positive stuff, they say, oh, that's going to translate. There are some things that actually translate from the preseason. I think for the Raiders defense, that secondary, the inexperience, as I said, the absence of game-changing plays, that's going to be a problem until one of their young guys, with his Darian Porter, DeCameron Richardson, Kayupu Kelly, until one of those guys starts making plays, quarterback's going to be able to pick that secondary apart.
No question about it. So we'll see how it all ends up, and we're going to know pretty soon here. Of course, the Cardinals coming up on Saturday. We will be live after the game. Myself and Murph will be live after the game. Mo's also live up on Bleacher Report, so make sure you catch that as well. And we'll be back with you on Tuesday to break it down, see what we saw to get ready for week 1 of the 2025 NFL season. Mo, have a great weekend, man. I know you're going to be busy covering the entire league as well as the Raiders. And we'll see you on Tuesday.
Take care, Scott. Take care, Raider Nation.
All right. Don't forget to follow Mo on X at MoMoton, MoEMoton. I am at LV Gully, and the show is SNB Today. Shout out to our producer from Odyssey, Mike Robier. Keeps us rolling. Appreciate his work, as well as Mark Bonilla, our executive producer on the radio in Las Vegas. For Mr. Moton, I am Scott Branson. This has been Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey Sports original podcast. We'll see you guys all on Saturday after the game.